Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Accessibility Talks, or A11y Talks, the monthly virtual meetup where we chat about digital accessibility, inclusivity, and usability. Each month, we invite a speaker to present a topic, and afterward, we invite the community to ask questions and participate in the discussion. I'm your host today. My name is Andrew Olson. I work at Principal Financial, and I use the pronouns he, him. I am a red-haired male, long red hair, Viking-esque, wearing dark rimmed glasses and wearing proudly my green Progress Over Perfection shirt from Merrill Evans. Before we dive into the talk, let's take a moment to remind everyone that our group is committed to creating a friendly and safe environment for all. We expect all participants, speakers, hosts, viewers on YouTube, and those commenting on social media to follow the Accessibility Talks Code of Conduct. This applies to all community interactions, including events, verbal questions, and chat and text channels. You can view the full Code of Conduct on our website at https://a11ytalks.com/conduct. Our goal is to foster productive dialogue where participants can share and learn from one another in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Do you have questions? We love questions. This year, we're shaking things up a bit and trying a new format. We're now inviting viewers to submit their questions ahead of each talk so we can incorporate them into the recording of the session. If you have a question for our speaker, here's how you can ask. During a live stream video, type your question directly into the YouTube chat window. If you're not watching live, you can still post your questions. Add them to the comments section on YouTube or share them on LinkedIn, Mastodon, or Blue Sky, wherever A11y Talks is at. And just be sure to @ us or include the hashtag A11y Talks. That's A11yTalks. Direct links to all of our social media platforms, and you can find those listed on our website. We look forward to hearing from you and continuing this great conversation that we're going to have today and learn from each other. We can't do this without our sponsors, so we have a huge shout out to our bronze sponsors, which are the Agile Collective and Principal Financial Group. That's where I work. We really appreciate your support. We also have our Alley Cat Club members, and so these are people that donate monthly to A11y Talks, either with our one-time donors or they have it recurring monthly. So thank you so much for your financial contributions. Want to see your organization recognized as a sponsor of A11y Talks and help fund these amazing monthly meetups? You can do so by visiting our sponsorship page at alleytalks.com/sponsorship to learn more. We need your financial support to compensate our amazing speakers and improve our live stream productions to provide the best content possible for our community. Lastly, if your company uses Benevity for matching donations or gifts, you can double your contribution. Just search for A11y Talks and we should appear as A11y Talks by Midwest Open Source Alliance. Today, I'm very excited to introduce Shelby Mitchell, Senior Manager of Digital Accessibility at Discover Financial Services. We have a fun fact about Shelby is she is a mom of 2 busy boys, and her oldest has cerebral palsy, and it's the reason she got into digital accessibility. Shelby, can you tell a little bit more about your boys and what you do?
Yes. So I have, as you mentioned, I have 2 boys. One is 8 and the other one is 6. Um, and yes, my 8-year-old, we found out shortly after he was born that he'd suffered a stroke. We don't know exactly when, but that quickly turned into sort of a personal roller coaster of getting specialists set up and, all kinds of testing done. And ultimately, we learned that, he needed some help with building up that gross motor function, fine motor, but probably the area that his cerebral palsy has affected the most is his speech and his feeding. So he does use a communication device. And he's getting pretty good at it. I will say one of his favorite things is cars. So we've had to program all of these luxury cars into his communication device. We're talking Maserati, Lamborghini, all of the really nice ones. So he's a big car guy. And my younger kiddo is, all he's ever known is having a brother who needs some additional supports. And so he's really just always been this little helper. So he's always there to help his brother. And one of the things that I think that I've learned working in digital accessibility and with people with disabilities is, um, I have to remind my 6 year old, ask if it's okay to help. We can't just assume that someone wants help because they have a disability. Um, you have to ask, because sometimes people want to do it themselves. They're able to do it themselves. So always ask. Um, so yes, because of my kiddos, that's really the reason that I got into digital accessibility. And that journey started during COVID lockdown, when I no longer had a commute into work. I had a little bit of extra time, and I was working in product management at the time, and the work was very repetitive. It wasn't very creative because you were just focused on getting the work out the door. And I'm a creative person by nature. I like to come up with new ideas. I like to try different things. And so I was like, well, how can I merge this personal experience with the work that I do? And so I started looking into inclusive design, universal design, and stumbled upon digital accessibility.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. First off, thank you so much for sharing your personal journey.
Oh,
And I feel kindred spirits here where I used to say I build websites, but now I say I help people. I feel like I've crossed over to accessibility in the digital space where it's not just building things to get it out the door, as you say, it's really about making sure everybody can access whatever is online. So, with that, thank you so much. That's a wonderful background to what we're talking about today, which is riding the digital accessibility roller coaster. I'm going to go off the screen and love for you to take it away. Excited to hear what you have. Thanks,
all
Shelby.
right, perfect. All right, just want to confirm really quickly that you can see my slides if Andrew.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure before we get too far into it. I will say, the slides are more of a, just to make sure that I'm covering all of the points, but I could really do this without the slides. So it's, I do have some images that I'll share some of like what those images are. But like I said, the slides are really more to help me make sure that I hit all of the points that I want to hit, because um, when we're riding the digital accessibility roller coaster, it is really important to stay grounded. So we are going to be talking about those strategies today. And just as a quick reminder, my name is Shelby Mitchell. I am a Caucasian female with dark brown hair. I wear glasses because I'm very nearsighted, getting close to bifocals. So, I get to look forward to that in my future. And as mentioned, I'm the senior manager of digital accessibility at Discover Financial Services, and my pronouns are she, her. So, we've all heard the term digital accessibility is a journey. And I have this image of this paved road with some rolling hills, some, fall trees on either side of the road. And, you know, well, I like that phrase that it's a journey. It's really not just a journey. It's more of a roller coaster. And I have an image of this steel roller coaster with lots of twists and turns and loops. Um, and the reason I say it's a roller coaster is when we are working in digital accessibility, we we have this forward movement happening, but then there's twists, there's turns, there might be some loops, but then at some point things come to a screeching halt. So, and when I say screeching halt, that's where that change or challenge comes in place. It's something that disrupts that forward movement. And so what happens when the roller coaster comes to a screeching halt? When we run into those challenges, we can become stressed, frustrated, or if we have enough change and challenges happening multiple times a week, multiple times a day, we can even get burnout. So, and change isn't always one of those things where it's one area. It can happen in many different forms. We can have changes in priorities. We can have budget cuts. Maybe there were teams that we'd planned to work with and on certain projects, and their budgets got cut. So maybe that project was canceled for the year. Or maybe we had started on the project, but then again there was a cut and that project was deprioritized for the year. We can have staffing changes. So we could be working with some really great digital accessibility champions. We've partnered with them. They know about as much as we do as the experts, and they've been really good champions for us in their areas. And then they leave the company, or they go to a different area where they don't have a direct impact on digital accessibility. Like maybe they've decided they want to work in a totally different area. Or they leave the company and then we need to educate new people coming in. So we start at essentially ground zero again. We can also encounter pushback. So we may have some leaders who understand digital accessibility, understand the value, have even worked in it in other roles at other companies. But then we also have managers or leaders who haven't worked in it, and they struggle with understanding the value and how it will benefit their bottom line. So we may encounter that pushback. And there's many more scenarios that I could have called out. There's probably ones that you're thinking of that you've encountered that are not on the slide or that I haven't mentioned. But I just want to reiterate that change comes in many forms, and it can come multiple times a day, or multiple times a week. So to add a little bit of context, I'm going to tell a short story, and I have an image of a stack of books, some books open, because probably my most challenging year in digital accessibility wasn't when I was working to create a distinct function within my organization. It actually came last year, and there was a lot of change last year. And I want to acknowledge for everyone who is present today or watching the replay that we're experiencing a lot of change now too. But I'm going to talk about the change that me and my team experienced last year, because it was really the catalyst for some of the strategies that I'm going to share later. So, last year was a challenging year. Early in the year, my company announced that it was going to potentially merge with another organization. And that same week, the vice president of my area, who had made it possible for digital accessibility to be my full-time role, she left the company. So two very big changes or potential changes within a week of each other. But that wasn't the biggest challenging and biggest change that I encountered last year. That actually happened in June. We had one of our internal governance teams come to my team and say, we don't have any formal documentation that your program exists. Like, yeah, you might have been doing stuff, but we don't have it. Hadn't been formalized. So everybody's still kind of doing their own thing. Which was extremely frustrating, because we'd been, as they mentioned when we were having the conversation with one of our governance teams, We'd been doing the work for several years, but it had been very grassroots, and we'd been partnering with teams who they were curious about digital accessibility. They wanted, they had a personal connection to disability, and they wanted to incorporate digital accessibility into their work. So, like I said, it had been very grassroots, and we had started to work on the governed documentation, but because this team came to us, we had to get it done in a very short amount of time. And so everything we'd planned to do for the year last year went out the window. And my team and I quickly had to map out everything that we were going to get done, like our plan for the next 4 months, so that we could deliver our formal program at the end of that time. So each week we'd have our deliverables so that we could ultimately meet that end deadline. Each day I would have my 3 things that I was going to do for the day, so that again, we're tracking toward that end deadline. And so I'm a planner. I have everything planned out, come into work, and I start to, I start to work, and I'm, probably 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes into my work for the day. And my manager comes to me and says, "You're not going to do that work today. I need you to work on this presentation. It's due at noon, and we need to provide an update to leadership on where we are with um, getting our program formalized." Very frustrating. Or another scenario that I encountered, we just got edits back from stakeholders on the document that you'd put together, and it's a complete rewrite. And we need to meet this afternoon on the revisions. Again, another very frustrating situation. Or there might be another, like a team member may come to me and say, "I need help with this part of the project that we're working on. I'm not able to get to some of the people that we need to get to." So ultimately, whatever I'd planned for the day, that went out the window. And all of these things, particularly for someone who is traditionally a planner like me, um, can be very frustrating. And what I realized, though, was that while I couldn't change the work that was happening in a given day, or that needed to get done in a given day, I could change how I approach the work. I could, you know, old me could have just gotten really frustrated, continued to fume, and like, okay, I'm going to get the work done. But the work probably wouldn't get done as quickly, probably wouldn't get done as well. And then that frustration would carry over to going home to my partner and my kids, and I wouldn't be present when I got home. And then I probably wouldn't sleep well because, again, I'd still be frustrated from all of the change that had happened in that given day. Or the other way that I could approach the change that was happening is I could take a breath, give myself a moment, and ultimately center myself. And in taking that little break, that little moment, I could then focus on the work that needed to be done, do my best work, do my purpose driven work, and then go home and be present with my family and probably get a better night's sleep. So I want to ask a question for you to think about is, what would it mean if you took a pause, and in doing so, that allowed you to bring your best self to the work at hand? And another question how would taking a moment to take care of yourself enable you to effectively do the work you're passionate about? So now that I've told my story, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how do we stay grounded. When we prioritize our needs throughout the day, it enables us to effectively respond when things get challenging. And we can do this in several different ways. And there's three areas that I've found to be extremely helpful when I'm dealing with change on a daily basis, multiple times a day. And those areas are stillness, movement, and release. And we're going to go into each of these in just a little bit. So the first area is stillness. And you may have different ideas of what stillness actually means. But for me, stillness is, it's taking that breath or that pause, or separating yourself from the challenge or the change for a moment, just to check in with yourself. So often we just try to barrel through the work. And if we don't check in with ourselves, we can just continue to build stress in our bodies and in our minds, and it can make it very difficult to focus. So stillness can be something as simple as taking a few deep breaths. It can be taking a short walk. Again, you're just creating that little bit of separation from the work for a moment so that you can check in with yourself and you can take care of yourself. Or if it's something that resonates with you, you can even meditate. And that's something I understand not everybody is into meditation. I actually find it very beneficial, and it's something that I do every morning because it helps set me up for the day. But then I also do those deep breaths throughout the day. If there's somebody comes to me with something and it's it's something that's very high priority, has to get turned around quickly, I take a few breaths. So I hope, if there's any of these that resonate with you, I hope you'll try them out. Like I said, I love meditation. Again, it's not for everyone, but there's nothing more important than breathing at the bare minimum, because if we're not breathing, we're not living. So again, the idea with stillness is you want to take a short moment for yourself to clear your mind and then come back to your work with a different mindset. The next area is movement. And again, movement can be and mean different things to different people. To me, movement is doing activities that allow you to physically release frustration and stress. And I want to acknowledge that everyone has different levels of physical abilities. And movement can be executed in different ways depending on what your abilities are. So if it's available to you, movement can be going for a walk. It can be working out. Maybe you're really into weight training or high intensity interval training. That one's a really good one for stress release, by the way. I actually do weights more often than anything else now, but it can, if that's not available to you, there's also simple movements you can do at your desk. Maybe it's rolling your neck, turning your neck a few times. Maybe it's just twisting your wrists. If you've got a stand desk, maybe you stand up and you sit down a few times. It can even be moving, looking around the room, if that's what's available to you. So, looking at different areas in the room. Or sometimes all you have time for or the ability to do is you can even visualize physical activity. Sometimes, like, I will just close my eyes and I will, visualize I'm walking or, running through a park or a forest, or You know, running is definitely more of a visualization for me. I'm not much of a runner. But again, it just kind of allows you to um, regulate that nervous system and get out of what can be a fight, flight, or freeze um, situation. So, as mentioned, when we move, we release stress from our bodies that it can inhibit our ability to focus. And then the last area is release. And this is probably one of the areas that was most challenging for me to implement. But when I practiced release, I was able to get so much done and I was much less stressed anytime I was encountering change or a challenge. Um, and what release is you're doing the work that's required and then you're leaving it at work. So what would this look like? So release can be doing the best work that you can in the amount of time you have. Sometimes we only have an hour to do something. Sometimes we have a half a day. Maybe we only have 30 minutes. But the idea is do the best work that you can within the time constraints. And then when you're done, you hand it over to the next person who needs to do something with it. And then the next part is where the magic happens. Is once it's out of your hands, you move on to the next task and you give that next task your full attention. And you don't worry about what someone else is doing with what you handed off to them. You just focus on that next task. And like I said, that can be really challenging because depending on who we're working with, we may be like, oh, this person always gives me so many edits back. I know I'm going to have to redo things. But when we spend all of that brain power worrying about what's going to happen or what's going to come back to us, we can't focus on what we're doing, on that next task that we're doing. So again, it's really important to do the best that you can in the amount of time you have, hand it off, and don't worry about it until it comes back to you. So when you get the edits or feedback on the work, that's when you address when it comes back. You don't worry about it once it's out of your hands. And like I said, releasing allows us to remove that cognitive load that weighs us down, and it weighs down our ability to be able to be present and focus on the next task that we have. And when we can do that, we can actually get a lot done. And like I said, this can probably be one of the more challenging things to do. But as we practice it, again, it can be so freeing. Like, all right, they're going to do whatever they need to do with it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to worry about this next thing because this is the next thing on my plate that I've got to get done. So I do want to just recap before we open it up for questions of the three areas. And each of these strategies is intended to provide us with a moment to check in, to take care of our needs, and then resume the work at hand. So again, the first one is stillness. So taking a breath, maybe meditating, maybe just getting up and taking a quick little walk around just to create that space that you need to check in with yourself. Movement, again, you can go on a walk, you can do some stretches at your desk, you can visualize some of that physical movement to bring that stress level down and start to regulate your nervous system. And then release, get the work done, release it, move on to the next thing. So hopefully with these different strategies, my hope for you is that maybe you found one or two that you want to try. Or maybe it's helped spark some ideas for different things that you want to do to check in with yourself and take care of yourself. And my hope is that you will take the time that you need, take the breaks that you need throughout the day so that you're checking in with yourself, you're taking care of yourself, and you can ultimately bring your best work to the things that you're passionate about. So, with that, I believe we're going to open it up for questions.
Thanks so much, Shelby. That was wonderful. We do have questions, and I have some questions as well, but let's go to what others have kind of sent in. All right. The first question is on the screen. I'll read it out. Have you recognized burnout in your team? How do you approach helping them?
That's a really good question. I would say our team, some of our team definitely got really close to burnout during that time last year. I think the most important thing um, that I found is holding space for them to like, hey, I need to have a conversation, or really taking a moment to read the room in a way. Like if someone's seeming more quiet than usual, or maybe um, how they're expressing themselves verbally, um, or maybe they seem more irritated, like reaching out to them separately and saying, hey, I noticed, you know, something seemed a little off. Do you want to talk about it? And opening that up. I've reached out to my team before and say, hey, I know this was a really tough meeting that we just got out of. Um, I wanted to see how you're doing. And we've had conversations, like there've been times where it's like I've had conversations after hours with my team so that, again, my team members are able to have that space and maybe do a little bit of venting to me, and we can we can commiserate together um before they have to pick their kids up from school, or before they have to transition into personal life. But I think the big thing is just being aware of how your team is coming into different situations, and if you're noticing something that seems to be off, um, reaching out to them individually. And if you don't, like, some of us are really good at picking up on nonverbal cues, and how something might be off. Some of us aren't as good at that, and that's totally fine. So you can always just ask, like, is there anything going on that, or how are you doing? And having those conversations.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Very good advice. All right. The next question is on the screen here, and I'll read it out. How does burnout impact your ability to advocate for accessibility effectively?
Yep, that's another really good question. And I will say burnout, um, from an accessibility standpoint, obviously started started with my kiddo, and trying to get him the services that he needed. Because when he was very young, I I tried to take on getting all the specialists scheduled, getting all of, oh, he needs occupational therapy. Okay, he needs speech therapy, feeding therapy, physical therapy. And I tried to take all of that on myself, and I got burnout very quickly. I also, when things were really heightened, I'd also had my younger son, and I was also going through postpartum depression while trying to take care of all of it. And I definitely hit a place of burnout, and I realized, I couldn't be a good mom, I couldn't be a good worker, I couldn't be a good partner if I was burnt out, because I was just overwhelmed. There would be days that I would look at this list of things to do for both work and personal, and I'd be like, I don't even know. I was in that freeze state. Like, I don't even know how to move forward. So that's where burnout, we can be in that fight, that flight, or that freeze space, and it can be very hard to focus. So that's where, with personal life, my partner and I had a conversation and we started really dividing and conquering the things that we had to tackle. And then in work, I've had burnout in work too. And again, the most important thing is taking the time to let your manager know, like, here's what's going on. I really need like I really need a little bit of support understanding like what absolutely has to get done, because right now it seems like everything on my 2 page is of to-dos has to get done right now, and I'm just can't get it all done. Or when your team comes to you, it's like, okay, and helping them do the prioritization, because when you're in burnout, sometimes you're not even in a headspace where you can prioritize the work that you need to do.
That's wonderful advice, and definitely have been in those situations. So I love the way you've broken it down into those three categories. That's really, really helpful. So thanks so much for the advice. We have
Yeah.
another question. I'm going to read it. It's on the screen. What role do organizations and leadership play in preventing burnout for accessibility professionals?
Yeah. So I will speak for my team. Um, and I will say, for a long time at my organization, I was an individual contributor, and I was the one digital accessibility person. But then I was able to build a team. Um, and when I became a leader of the team, I'm actually took a lot of learnings from, like, past positive and negative leadership experiences with past leaders that I'd worked with. And I probably one of the things that was most important to me was creating that space of safety. So like whenever I have a one-on-one with my team, with any one of my team members, like, they know, like, you can let it all out. Like, you want to complain about somebody, you want to, like, you got something going on personally, just let it all out. That's totally fine. Whatever happens in our conversation stays in our conversation, unless you're okay with me sharing what's going on. And that's really created that space where, when my team or anybody on my team is starting to feel overwhelmed, or like they might be getting to burnout, they come to me and they are able to advocate for themselves because they know that they're in a safe space. And so really, as leaders, and as organizations, we have to make sure that we're creating that safety. um, and I understand, not everybody, unfortunately, is in a space where they may feel safe with their leader, but there may be other leaders within the organization that they do feel safe with, and they can have those conversations. But I would say, probably my biggest responsibility as a leader is to ensure that I'm creating safety for my team so that they can come to me with anything. And I'm there to listen. I'm there to support. And if they want my ideas, I'm happy to share them. But ultimately, I'm here to be there to support them.
I have an interesting take on this. I might be an interesting question you haven't thought of, or maybe you have. Do you feel like when they said we don't have a formal program, you need a formal program, in a weird way, was that your organization way of saying this is how we want to support you? We like your work, but we need to validate this with either budget, or is this their way of supporting you in a very traumatic, hard way?
I think it was. I think it was just a. I'll say yes, and the team that came to us, looked across the organization and was like, well, nobody's really, everybody's kind of still doing different things.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's what's that guidance? And we, like I said, we've been doing things very grassroots. So the teams that we were working with, like they already knew what like our standards were and things like that. But everybody else, we were kind of trying to chip away at the people who are like, oh yeah, we know this is important, or like, yeah, I have a personal connection to disability. We should be doing this. But then, the teams that weren't really ready to work with us yet were we'd be like, okay, they're not ready yet. We'll come back around. But yeah, I think, the team that came to us and said, you need to get a formal program in place because it's not consistent yet of how everybody's tackling this. I mean, I think it was a positive. And then, we've since had conversations at the leadership level, and they're like, yeah, we should be, yeah, why didn't we have this standard like formally communicated before? So
The
it's
reason I
definitely getting the momentum that
The
it
reason I
needed.
asked is that I've experienced that with like, are you a support organization? Do you enhance and support kind of like when you have a security problem, these people come in? Are you an initiative where this is things that we need to put on top of it? Or are you like an embedded part of a team? This is the new way we do things. Like just like how when mobile accessibility or mobile devices came along, we needed to mobile things. So I've seen organizations or had these conversations of like, so you're doing things, we agree it's good, but what are you doing and how are you a part of this organization?
Yeah,
And everybody kind of scratches their head and kicks around and wonders where you belong when you know you belong in all the places and you're doing the good work and they see the good work, but it's a little challenging. So
yeah,
sorry that, and thanks so much for sharing a bit of where you came from and how things view. I just find it very fascinating how programs need to build themselves to justify themselves when
hmm,
organization does recognize the work, and they just have a tough time finding where you fit. So
yeah.
uh, we move on to the last question here, and then we're going to wrap up quickly here. So the question is on the screen. How can the accessibility community better support each other to prevent burnout?
So again, another really good question. All of these questions are so awesome. I think probably one of the things that we can do that is most helpful is sharing the struggles that we're having. And I feel like, a good number of advocates in our space share those struggles. I also want to acknowledge that we're in, while last year was like my big change year on a global scale, this year, we're going through a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty. And so many of us are already like on this heightened level of stress and frustration, and we probably are hitting burnout because we never know what's going to come out the next day. Um, and I think sharing what we're experiencing is very helpful because it reinforces that we're all in a similar boat. While our stories may be different, we're all experiencing stress and frustration. And then, when someone asks, like, okay, I am really burnt out, I don't even know what to do, offering to have a conversation because, we may be in different spaces. Like maybe we're not burnt out right now, but we've been there. And I think one of the things that's been most valuable, and the thing that I love working in this space, other than having the personal connection with my son, is I feel like the digital accessibility space, the disability advocacy space, everyone is just so willing to have a conversation so that we can learn from each other. And I think when we can continue to have conversations with each other, whether, it's on social media, I actually prefer if we can have a one-on-one or have like a live forum where we can share. um, it just helps us out because then we can share those ideas that we have. We can commiserate, um, and then we can all work together to continue to support each other.
What a great message here, and the great transition um, to the end of this talk. So I really appreciate you giving this great advice, breaking this down in this way, really for sharing your story and how you bring your work to others and how you bring your personal self to your work. I think that's a really interesting presentation today. So, and really good advice. I know I learned quite a bit and have some checks myself to check in on myself throughout the day. So, this was actually much needed today, whether you know it or not. So, thank you so much for your time, Shelby. And
Yeah.
with that, I'm gonna go through the last slides here and wrap up. So we we have this space to share and talk about burnout, just like this wonderful presentation today. So if this resonated with you and you have something to say and you want to share with the community, we're always looking for speakers and new voices in the accessibility community. And to let you know, we make a conscious effort to include marginalized groups in tech and in our speaker lineup. So if you're interested, please reach out to us at team@alleytalks.com. An also great thing that we have here is for those of you with IAAP certifications, Alley Talk speakers and attendees receive professional development credits, which are CAECs, through the IAAP for your continuing education. We're always looking for feedback. We're always looking to improve how we bring these great conversations to you. So we'd love your feedback. What are we doing well? What are ways that we can do better? Please go to alleytalks.com/feedback and share your positive or a suggestion on how we can improve this. We really value your input. Lastly, follow us and subscribe to continue to get these great conversations month over month. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss a talk. Consider contributing to Alley Talks through Benevity or our Open Collective page. Hit up your corporate sponsor to sponsor us. That would be wonderful as well. Follow us on LinkedIn. There's some really great conversations out there, and we can continue this conversation as well today out there. Follow us on Blue Sky if you're there. Follow us on Mastodon. And lastly, I just really want to thank Shelby for your time today and want to thank the community for continuing to support us. I love what we do here at Alley Talks. And thank you for attending. We'll see you next month.